well, she is revered in her own special way, giving today's talk, Tony Hamilton. Can you unmute yourself?
I did.
Oh, there you go. Okay, there you go.
I muted myself back before. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So today we are looking at chapter 5 of our textbook. And I'm going to start out with a little review because chapter 5 begins talking about the Trinity. So we need to review spirit, soul, and then talk about the body because chapter 5 mostly focuses on the body. You know, it's all mixed in there. So spirit is the presence, that self-conscious, self-knowing principle, the creative intelligence, what we refer to as first cause. And a really important point that this chapter makes is that it chooses, spirit chooses, okay? The soul is the subjective or the subconscious mind, also the creative medium and law. It's not conscious, it doesn't choose. It receives the ideas of spirit and it does what it does to create form according to those ideas. It does not question, it does not choose, it just receives and creates out of that receiving. On page 92, it says that it is the law obeying the will of spirit. And as we love to say around here, it just says yes. On page 70, it points out that God did not make law, that law is co-eternal with God. God did not make substance, it coexists with God. So it's all God, spirit, the one, the presence, whatever name you want to call it. Sometimes I think we have too many names, but the oneness. It all exists together, but God did make, does make, is making, and will continue to make forms. And so it makes a clear distinction. Now, this chapter focuses on the body, and the body is form. The body is the effect. The body is manifestation. Things that are ideas in form. So on page 66, it says creation means the giving of form to the substance of mind or spirit. The soul of the universe is that receptive medium into which the spirit breathes forth the forms of its thoughts. So this chapter is talking about the Trinity, spirit, soul, and body, but with a focus on body. Now, I want us to be careful not to be confused or thrown off track by semantics in this chapter. The totality of God is probably something that we will never completely understand with our finite minds. I'm just saying, you may feel differently, but I think that's a reasonable statement. But I do trust that the heart of our spirit, absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, within our hearts, within our spirit, I do believe that we understand. Not in an intellectual way necessarily, but in a way of knowing. And so in these chapters, one of the things that happens is the science of mind text fluctuates between the absolute and the relative, and it goes back and forth continuously. And I think it's really important to understand which is absolute and which is relative because it can cause confusion. So when we speak of spirit or mind or the idea, the divine mental picture, and we speak of the subconscious or the creative medium, the formless substance, we're speaking in the absolute. We're talking about spirit. and different aspects or manifestations of spirit. But when we talk about body, form, the effect, we're speaking of the relative. However, it is the expression of spirit, and spirit is expressing through it. On an absolute level, we're told that the body of God is the entire manifestation of spirit. So I'm going to say body with a capital B, the invisible and the visible. And as we like to say, as above, so below. So it's the absolute and the relative, the body of God, and within it, the lesser bodies, like you and me and flowers and trees and plants and all of the forms that we experience. But the important thing is that behind the form is spirit. And the chapter gives an example of spirit having the idea and projecting the rose. And so the rose is that body, it's that form, it's that effect, and it's never caused. The rose itself is not a being in and of itself, an entity in and of itself, but it has consciousness within it. But the textbook makes a clear distinction that consciousness is not in the body or the form, that the form is in consciousness, immersed in the oneness in the spirit now. You know me, I always try and talk about the elephant in the room. On one level, this makes sense and it rings true because God, spirit, is all there is and it's everywhere present. So the multiplicity of forms in the one are expressing, the one is expressing as many. But understanding this is no simple task because it really, really is a mystery. So let me explain what I mean. Next, the textbook presents us with a conundrum because it says, when the body is no longer a fit instrument, the soul deserts it. When I read that, it backed me up because I said, wait a minute. It just said that spirit is not in us, we're within spirit. We're within that oneness. So if we're within it and it's everywhere evenly present, how can it desert us? And so I have a supposition for you. It says, when the body is no longer a fit instrument, the soul deserts it. Which soul? The absolute soul or the relative soul? Or is the soul only absolute? Or is it absolute and relative? Meaning, is the soul only spirit with a capital S? Or is it spirit with a lowercase s also? Are they separate or one and the same? Because if the body is in consciousness, how can it be deserted? So here's what I'm going to propose. It comes out of the invisible, the formless, invisible creative substance. All form comes out of the invisible, out of that creative medium, and it returns to that creative medium. It returns to the formless, invisible substance. And I have an analogy for you, one you've heard before, like a wave to the ocean. So spirit is life. It's active. The ocean rolls, it moves, and it forms a wave. The wave rides on the body of the ocean. That presence, that substance, right? The wave rides on that. And when it gets to the shore, just before it gets to the shore, it crests and then it fizzles and it returns back to the ocean. So when I contemplated this was something that helped me understand the conundrum or the question that I had, because it seemed like the textbook was contradicting itself when maybe it actually wasn't. Next, interestingly enough, it lightly mentions that the human body has an exact counterpart in a non material body. This reminded me of when I was very young. I think I was maybe in college, maybe a freshman or so. And I used to come over to the city and I would go to this place called Wise Books. And Wise Books was a bookstore that was full of metaphysical books. And I used to read all of these books. So there was an author by the name of Blavatsky, if I'm saying it correctly. And Blavatsky had a book that talked about the seven bodies, that man had seven bodies. I had completely forgotten about this. The Kabbalah talks about it. The Vedas, the Upanishads talk about it. There are other cultures that teach that we have different bodies and there are different planes of existence and different realms. Now, our textbook just touches upon it, but it reminded me something I studied so long ago and had completely forgotten. And it just supports this idea that there is an exact counterpart to the human body in a non-material body. So that substance. It also reminded me that in the Bible, creation happens twice. In the very beginning of the Bible, creation happens once and then it happens again, which I think also supports the idea that we have a physical body form and we have a non material body. The textbook makes a point of saying that spirit is changeless, but form is constantly changing. And then, because it has to, because it can't do anything else, it talks about form and time. The formless takes form in time. It speaks about recollection, attention, and anticipation, which it also calls the past, the present, and the future. The thing that's important is what it's saying is that these things are the measure of our experience. So now we're getting into mathematics and we're getting into measurement. And you see why I said that I don't know whether or not our finite minds will ever completely understand the totality of spirit, because this intelligence is no joke. It, it is a very complex thing. So now we have introduced form and time and space. And the textbook speaks to the possibilities of an outline. So now we're talking about boundaries. In time and space, form has an outline, it has boundaries, because we go from the formless with a focused idea that has boundaries in order to create the form. And it's done so within time and space. It says that if there was not the possibility of an outline, we would walk through each other without recognition, which just set so many things going in my mind. So, this intelligence, this presence, as we've said so many times, contemplates and creates out of that contemplation. It's creating out of itself these ideas from its own substance, which it somehow does and manifests in these unique and individual forms. And it is the source of these forms, it sustains these forms, it maintains these forms until, for whatever unknown reason, because we don't know, until for whatever unknown reason it doesn't. The textbook says that when the form is no longer fit, but the truth is that's not the only reason. So when we think of the form being no longer fit, we think, oh, we get sick and our bodies break down or whatever, but that's not the way that everyone leaves their form. And I was very, very fascinated by the focus on time and space, because some form lasts longer than others. And we don't know why or what that formula or that reason is, other than it was the intention of spirit when it was created. Because you can cut down a tree and build a house and it will stand for years and years and years. But you can pick a flower and within a day or two, that flower begins to disintegrate. So it's a really complex and fascinating thing to look at and to study. So then the textbook talks about cause and effect, and it says that effect is anything that did not make itself and has a power back of it that caused it to be. Well, that's everything that we know of in form, yes, including you and I. Involved in the idea which the spirit drops into the creative medium is everything necessary to bring this idea into form and for the form to evolve. So it is telling us that within the seed, within the idea, everything is there that determines not only what this plant that grows is going to be, or what this idea that grows is going to be, but also what it becomes throughout its lifespan. All the potentiality is there. And then I say to myself, why do I worry? Why do I think that I can't have something or do something or be something? Of course, we know the answer to that, but it's futile. I'm wasting time, because within the spectrum of this life and the ideas that are within that seed and all the possibility of it, it is impacted by time and space. It's something that's very profound and really, really, really touches me. So the idea that everything that exists is made from this God stuff, this intelligence, this substance, everything that exists is made from this. And within it, we have the potential to be, do, have, express, experience. It gives me the understanding that we really, really do have complete freedom. And anything that's in the way is a lie, because spirit does not restrict itself. It would never restrict itself. And it's ongoing. It is infinite. And even though form may be finite, spirit is infinite. and it is within us. It expresses in and through, in quotes, mankind in ways that it doesn't express as far as we can see in and through and as the other manifestations of form. And so I was very struck that towards the end of this chapter, immortality is discussed. And I was struck by that because we're taught in our teaching, we have the understanding that spirit is infinite, that there's no beginning, that there's no end. And this is so difficult, really, to wrap our minds around with with a clear understanding of what that means. It says that there could be a form within the very form that one's body now occupies in space. There might be innumerable bodies, each within the other, and each would be just as real as the one that we now think we occupy. From the standpoint of immortality, we have a body within a body to infinity. I was just like, wow. So there are so many different ideas. There's like so much to understanding spirit, so much to understanding ourselves and how spirit manifests through us. And now the textbook just touches on the fact that as above, so below could mean that this infinity is possible for us in different forms, in different ways, in different bodies, in different levels of expression. So it opens up for me. I almost, I've been in this teaching a long time. And I almost want to say that I had a different understanding. And this kind of blows my mind because I don't know about you, but for me, where I am right now, I'm looking at creating more freedom, creating more self expression, creating more opportunities and more possibility for myself. And I understand that we don't create, we co-create. So I don't want to get too technical here, but I'm looking at really being able to do the things that I want to do for whatever soul urge is coming through me, and how I can get the things out of my way that are interfering with that. And this chapter just gave me like a new level and expansiveness, which I pray I'm making clear to you. We really, when we understand that spirit is expressing through us and has put inside of us everything that we need to fully and completely live our lives, it just becomes so clear that there should be nothing stopping us. So I'll own that. I'll take it on. It becomes so clear that there should be nothing stopping me. And even though this is heady stuff and very complex, it has to be understood from the level of the heart. It has to be understood from a place of experiencing it and embodying it and being able to be consistent with it. So it just for me took me to another place and to a different level. And I was very excited about the opportunity of just sharing the chapter and what I experienced from looking at the chapter so that I could share it with you. So I just want to read the definition of body to you. It's from the glossary, page 577. Body is the outward form, the entire manifestation of spirit, both visible and invisible, the body of God. Within this one body of God is included all lesser bodies. This one body, coupled with the intelligence running through it, is called the Son, or the second person of the Trinity. This, of course, includes man, both visible and invisible. It also includes every gradation of consciousness, from the simple to the complex, from cell to an archangel. It is the entire manifestation of spirit on any and all planes. Body is the definite outline of flesh, containing all of the ideas which go to make the complete physical instrument. And lastly, I want to also include that the textbook tells us that planes of existence, are not places, but states of consciousness. And so the idea that this intelligence creates us in physical form, but there is an invisible form or multiple levels of consciousness within the one, is just so powerful and so freeing. And I just really am so excited by it. And I just pray that I have made it clear to you and that you understand. Let's take it into treatment. And so I just stop and listen for a moment and allow myself to be guided and led by the intelligence, by the power and presence that I call God. I open myself to this intelligence, to this power and presence in a way that I have not opened myself before, with a clarity that just allows me to feel no boundaries within the boundaries, that allows me to feel the expanse, that allows me to know the truth, that no matter what point I am in this divine presence, it is expressing in and through and as me. And it is informing me, and it provides me with everything that I require to live the life that I choose to live. There's no lack of limitation. There's no reason for doubt or fear. The power and presence within me knows all, no matter where I am, no matter what the condition, no matter what I am doing. The power and presence within me knows. It has the answers. It did not create the questions. It is expressing in and through and as each one. There is a level of freedom. There is a level of possibility. There is love. There is joy. There is just such this expansive, unlimited expression. It is the divine presence expressing uniquely by means of me, by means of you. It is all there is. It is available always, moment by moment. I simply need to be aware and open myself to it. And so for this understanding, for this realization, for this truth, for this awareness, I give thanks and I affirm that it expresses continuously ongoing, that I have a clarity that I will never again forget. And I am so grateful for this. And so I affirm this for myself. I affirm it for each one, and I simply release this word into the law, knowing it is the truth and it is already done. Please close with me. And so it is.
So it is.
And so it is.
Woo!